Hi, I'm Arthur from Union Matters, and this is the second Union Matters podcast. And I'm joined by Leah Lin. Leah is an elementary school teacher, and she is very active on social media, albeit a little differently from the way I am. And I thought it would be interesting for us to compare and contrast what we do. Leah, could you tell us how you became a teacher, how you became interested in teaching?
Yes, Arthur, thank you. So, when I graduated college, I had no idea what I wanted to do because, in college you take all these credits and all these different classes, and, you don't really know which direction to go. And when I graduated with a bachelor's in psychology, I thought that I wanted to be some sort of counselor. Even in my last year of college, I did do some volunteer work at Queens College as a peer counselor,
Mm-hmm.
where I would meet with some folks looking at their programs. We would talk about things, perhaps any stressors that they had in college. And I realized that I wasn't a huge fan of the one on one conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know if I want to work with adults for that matter. So then I decided to just take a year off after college to sort of find myself. I feel the typical story of most folks who don't really quite know what they're
Did you
doing at
find yourself?
21. I'm sorry?
Did you find yourself? Or are
I
you still
think
looking?
so, but I think I might still be looking because life is forever a journey. So I feel that we're always trying to find different aspects of ourselves. Um, so then I knew after taking a year that I did want to work with children. I always had a love for children. I
Mhm.
wanted to perhaps open up a daycare, just be surrounded by children. And then I said, well, that's going to require a lot of work. You need money, you need permits, you need like location. And then I said, you know what? Why not go back to school for my master's in education, see how I like it, and see if I can, perhaps pursue a career in education. And that's what I did. I got my master's in education and eventually went back and got my extension for gifted and talented as well to
Do you
teach
teach gifted
students.
and talented? Is that what you do?
I used to, yes, for the first part of my career, but for the past 4 years, I've been teaching ICT instead of gifted and talented.
Okay, well, they certainly need your help in a group like that. I recall becoming a teacher. I kind of became a teacher by accident. I used to be a musician, and I was not all that successful, but I went to Europe a few times, and the second time I came back, I had no job and no money, and I had this big old car, this big brown Mercury, piece of junk, and my driver's license was going to expire. And I saw a big sign on the subway while I was coming back from Jamaica renewing my driver's license. They said, if you have a college degree, you could be a teacher. And I did it, but I took this writing test, and when they found out that I could write coherently, they said, okay, you could be a teacher. And they asked, what grade do you want to teach? And I immediately said high school. Um, I love little kids. I love like two or three little kids and hanging out with them. But I think if I were with 25 little kids, that I would jump out a window. And I don't know. I think it takes incredible patience to do what you do. And I think I don't have whatever it is that you have to do what you do, but you were really focused on helping little kids, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because it sounds like I can't imagine being with high school children, although I've never experienced it because my experience has only been with elementary school students. But I'm interested in hearing the types of issues that occur at a high school level because I'm constantly hearing about curriculum and sort of like the educational issues, but I'm wondering, Arthur, what kind of like social emotional issues high schoolers kind of deal with because I'm sure it's pretty different than elementary schools.
Well, we're crazy at every age, all of us, children, teenagers, adults, and we all have situations we have to deal with. I don't think we're that fundamentally different. I mean, you're a chapter leader, and I was a chapter leader too, and I had to pivot to dealing with adults. We can be crazy at every age, but the thing that the thing that contrasts for me about high school and elementary is that I think you have so many more things that you might have to do than I might have to do. For example, I might teach, we call them preps. I'll teach 5 classes, and I might teach 2 or possibly 3 preps in the school that I was in. So I'll give the same lesson at least twice a day, possibly 3 to 5 times a day. And every time I make a mistake, I say, oh, you know what? Next time I won't do that. But I see you as all day teaching English, teaching science, teaching math, teaching social studies, teaching, I don't know, every single thing. And that freaks me out because I'm good with English. I could be good with social studies because it's language based, but I'm not good with math. I'm not good with science. So how can you do it all, you know?
I ask myself that every day. And after 10 years of teaching, with the demands of admin, or I would say the demands of the district, or let's say the top down demands are getting extremely significant and increasing, I sit back and I say, how am I still able to teach everything, reading, math, science, writing, social studies, but even that part where like the emotional labor of making those thousands of decisions a day of what our students need. I just find the time, whether it's during lunch, I'll be eating my lunch and doing what I need to do during lunch. I think about what went on in the morning block of my day and how maybe after lunch I need to change some things that I had planned for because, hey, the class is sleepy today. It's a Monday, so maybe they're not going to grasp this today. I should save it for tomorrow. So I readjust my day in any free time that I have. Luckily, I have a co-teacher, so I do have to say that I feel at ease at times because we really do divvy up the work in an equal way and our personalities match and we're on the same page most of the time and it's easier. But I imagine and I think back when I was just by myself in the classroom how hard and any time that I had I just utilized it as best as I could. So whether lunch, prep, I would get to school early, try to figure out if there's anything I need to adjust, sometimes stay an extra half an hour, 45 minutes, because I knew when I got home, then that life begins, home life. So it's definitely hard. It's definitely hard. But Arthur, I wanted to ask, we talked about differences in terms of like content, but I'm sure you had to prep more for like Regents exams and things like that, correct? It's more in depth.
Well, that's a question of how you look at it. Regents exams, my gosh, the English Regents exam, to my mind, is well, it's the second worst exam I've ever seen. The worst is called the NICESLAT, which you may have heard of. That's what measures the levels of English language learners, which level they should be at, and does it very poorly because it's really not a test of English, nor is the English Regents. It's a test of Common Coreyness, I like to call it. I'm forgetting the guy's name who invented Common Core. He said, when you write, no one gives a crap what you feel or think. And that goes against everything I've ever known about writing or reading or art. You know, that's why we're attracted to these great works of art. And to quash the voice of students in service of close reading for little details or writing that's not really writing, but we give you argument for and argument against, and you pick which you choose and steal the details and create nothing. And that's what the English Regents exam is. And that's what it is now. There were different versions of it that had, well, all were better than this, but they all had, good points and bad points. So yes, I've had to teach that, and it's horrible, especially for L's, because it doesn't benefit them at all. And secondarily for native speakers, because it doesn't benefit them either.
Right.
So that's a terrible thing that we have to do. I've had some freedom because I'm certified as an English teacher and I'm certified as an ESL teacher. So I can teach any class, and most administrators have left me alone to do what I want to do, which is teach them English, which is important for kids because they might want to help their grandmother at the doctor. They might want to buy a slice of pizza. They might want to make friends. They might want to do any number of things that have nothing to do with passing high-stakes tests. So that's really one of the scourges of my existence as a teacher. I just saw a video of you where you were talking about scripted lessons. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I believe this year more than ever that, especially with the new HMH curriculum, I felt that I've been hearing members either through social media or even members in my school where we were almost told visitors are coming in, they're going to have a checklist, this is what the checklist looks like, this is what you need to have in your room. And it was just heavily micromanaged. And I do sit on district consultation with my DR and the superintendent, and we've have many conversations in terms of what our superintendent is looking for when she visits our school and what her team is looking for when they come into our school. And we did have to set some boundaries because it was a curriculum. And I think folks need to start to realize that, yes, we are provided a curriculum, but how we choose to use that curriculum and pace that curriculum is up to the professionals, which is the teachers. And it seems that although there was a agreement between UFT, CSA, and DOE that, okay, you're still going to need to follow this. You could be in leeway like 2 weeks away from a module assessment or whatever the case may be, and you have to hit certain benchmarks at a certain time. It still felt for me that the autonomy of a teacher is limited because we still need to follow a specific curriculum in a specific way. And it's challenging because our student populations are all different. This reading curriculum is not going to necessarily be beneficial for students in different demographic areas, or how it works in my school, how I want to pace it might be different how it works in another school. And in my district alone, we have different populations of students. So we have to recognize that our pacings and that our module adaptations of when we decide to teach something should be left for us. And I feel that it's still happening more in elementary school. And I think in middle school too, with the whole IM curriculum as well, and even high school situations were happening where that became very scripted. So I think that it is a systematic issue that needs to be addressed, and that we don't need to have agreements made. We don't need to get to a point where all UFT, CSA, and DOE all need to sit down and say, okay, this is getting out of hand, let's come up with an agreement. It shouldn't even have to happen to begin with, right? Like, let teachers teach. This is what they know how to do, and they know what their students need. So yeah, I don't know what has happened. I don't know if it's because superintendents are being held accountable, so they're feeling the pressure as well, and obviously that trickles down. But yeah, it has been very scripted, and very like every couple of months, it's like, okay, this is what the superintendent's looking for now, so make sure you have this. And it's like, wait, what? Like, what happened to the last thing we were supposed to be implementing? So I find it that it raises a lot of anxiety in members and teachers, and it's a lot of pressure for both teachers, educators, but also for our administration too, because I'm sure they are being held accountable, and autonomy is just very limited.
Well, you can hear that my dog Julio is completely freaked out over this. He really does not approve of scripted lessons. Teacher autonomy is something I share this sentiment with Julio. Teacher autonomy is something very important. Teacher voice is something very important. And you said before that you spent all day with these kids. So aside from differences in groups, this particular group of kids, you have to know better than anybody, better than me, better than my dog, better than the superintendent, better than anybody. And teacher voice is something that I think is completely overlooked and not considered at all by the powers that be. I'm sure that you teach differently than I do. The best ESL teacher I know is my boss, Jackie Irving. She's great with kids, but her method is by being really, I don't know, maybe motherly. She always calls the kid honey and sweetie. She calls them honey and sweetie. I think if I called kids honey and sweetie, that I would be in jail. And it's not my preferred mode. I can be dramatic. I can exaggerate things. I can make a big deal out of small things that are important to me, but overlooked by the kids. Subject-verb agreement. It freaks me out when they say he go to the store, or when they say I am agree. They write I am agree. Little things like that I might focus on and make them try not to do that in speaking and in writing, so that they don't say, hey, who is the idiot who taught you English? And it turns out to be me. But my approach works for me. It might not work for you. It might not work for my boss. And I think people give little credence or credit to our individual voices. A scripted lesson suggests to me that you don't trust me at all. Read this thing, and why do you need me to do it? Why can't they just get one of the kids to get up there and read the lesson and, check the boxes? When I started as a teacher, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, we would get observed and they would write us up. And if you had an administrator that wasn't crazy, and there are administrators like that, I've worked for them, they would write up, you did A, B, and C. I liked when you did this, and I suggest when you do that, you do some other thing. And it's degenerated into Danielson, which is a checklist, and which is limited, and which I don't know how you apply it, say, to a music class or a phys ed class. There are things that vary in your class, in my class, in their classes, and we vary as people. So, it's disappointing that everything's got to be so universal and everything is a checklist.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I almost think taking it back to the way it was, where you were given a curriculum and then you had the freedom to supplement, to adapt the curriculum. For example, before there were folks visiting schools and coming in and making sure certain components were visible in your classroom and your lesson was flowing in a certain way. I remember being able to change the HMH curriculum and say, well, this is the module I want to start with because in fourth grade, this is what they end with. So I think starting in fifth grade, let's kind of revisit, like, for example, a small moment narrative. They're just coming back from summer, they have a lot to talk about. So for me, it makes sense as a teacher that I'm going to teach them about characters, setting, conflict resolution, and them writing about an experience that they had over the summer, perhaps using made up characters, whatever. But to use that particular module was something that my co-teacher and I said, well, this would work best. Then this year, it was more like, well, we can't deviate from the way the modules are, and we have to keep it the way that it is. Let's trust the curriculum and the way it was written, and let's see if it's going to be taught with fidelity, which I still don't even know what that means, and that word just keeps getting thrown around everywhere. Yeah, it's definitely going back to your point of the way things, were. It wasn't a bad way, I believe, and I think now we're just focused so much, almost in a sense of being like, we need to be perfect when we're teaching. And we know that there are so many outliers that occur during a single lesson. And I think that, we need to give educators the benefit of the doubt and that they know what they need to do to reach their students. So hopefully, with educators advocating and building power within their school, we start to see this as a citywide situation and that it needs to be changed, So Arthur, I wanted to ask, because I heard you say that you were also a chapter leader. How was your experience as a chapter leader? Did you find it difficult? Yeah, just tell us a little bit about
I want
it.
to respond to what you said and
Oh,
answer your question. I like that you were focused on things like narratives and student experience. I think that we touch students by relating to their experience, and I think that goes exactly counter to Common Core. I remember the guy's name now, David Coleman, who
yes.
suggests that your experience is worthless and that art, it follows to me that art is then worthless, and fiction is then worthless, and empathy is then worthless, and feeling is then worthless. So I like that you're trying to work that in, and it disturbs me that you're being discouraged from working that in, as opposed to doing A, B, and C and nothing else, and not varying at all, which I think they're making us teach kids to hate reading and to hate writing, which I think is not our goal. If we can encourage people to become readers and writers and thinkers, we'll be doing them a great service in the long run. And that kind of leads me to your question, what about being a chapter leader? Because as a chapter leader, I had to read the UFT contract, the collective bargaining agreement, cover to cover. And I can tell you it's not precisely a page turner or a spellbinding read. It's all this stuff that you need to plod through. If you are a reader, you can plod through the UFT contract and find out what your member needs to know and find out what you need to tell the principal at this point. If you've been trained to plod through everything, as it sounds like we're asking teachers to do for our kids, you probably hate doing that. I don't even love doing that, but I can do it because I'm a reader and I understand things that are difficult. It's not what I go do for pleasure, but I can do it, and you can do it as a chapter leader. Being a chapter leader was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my whole life. It took over my life. It was really challenging because I was chapter leader of Francis Lewis High School, That's the largest school in Queens. It's the most overcrowded school in the city. We have about 350 members, and something is always happening. Something could be good, could be bad, but it was trial by fire for me. I had never had a job like this before, and at first I was overwhelmed because I couldn't walk down the hall without somebody asking me a question, and I generally didn't know the answer at first, and I was carrying a pad in my pocket. Back then I used to have pockets, and I would write down whatever they would say to me and find an answer and get it back to them. And eventually the questions became repetitious, and I started, oh, I know that. And it became really much easier. But one of the things that led me to understand was that I really knew how to do this teaching job, because when I would walk out of the hall and into my classroom, I was very confident because I knew how to do this thing. And it took time for me to feel that way about being chapter leader. I did it for 12 years, and I think COVID, being online with 34 cat pictures who weren't necessarily paying attention, really ended it for me. I don't know if I should pause or just let Julio keep opining. He could probably
Is
work for
he?
the COE. Why don't you tell us about your experiences being chapter leader?
Okay. And I'm going to admit this, I did not want to be chapter leader. I didn't have such a great chapter leader when I first began teaching in 2014. And that chapter leader took me to one event where newly hired educators and me and two other teachers went with the chapter leader, which was nice. It felt supportive. The chapter leader was there. But then right after that, our monthly chapter leader meetings were very, I guess I could say, aggressive, because the chapter leader wanted, it was like everything was like file a grievance, file a grievance, file a grievance. I had no idea what that even was. I knew that meant, okay, if we didn't agree with something with our administration, like we had this ability to file a grievance against her, but like for what? I didn't understand the process or anything. And I wanted no part of it. I just wanted, as a new teacher, I wanted to just sit in my classroom, do what I need to do, and keep it moving. And then somebody else ran against the current chapter leader and won, because folks, I guess, have had enough and they didn't like the constant like negativity the chapter leader brought. And she won, and it was a good friend of mine, and she decided after 2 months of being chapter leader that she applied to be a literacy coach when literacy coaches were popular, and she had to leave because she started working for a different school. So then she approached me and said, Leah, I feel that, you know, you're getting this teaching in line and you're starting to feel more comfortable. You would be great at as being chapter leader. I said, me, I know nothing about being a chapter leader, you know? And essentially, she kind of mentored me in a way before I actually said yes. She took the time to really explain to me what it was and how advocating for educators, but also for public education, not only in your school, but outside of school, this can open up new doors for you and opportunities. So I said, okay, you know what, we'll do it. And I ran uncontested. Nobody ran against me, and I became chapter leader. So in the beginning, I felt the same as you, a little overwhelmed. I decided to learn as I go. So I said, let me be approached with questions and situations, and then I'll research and look up what the contractual language says about a certain situation. And that's what I started doing. So now just like you experienced repetition and just, things that were coming through. I said, okay, I'm able to handle this. I know the answer to this. And then I realized it was okay to say, no, I don't know the answer to this
Right.
at this
Of course.
moment. I'll get back to you. But I always felt that anyone who came with a question to me, I needed to get back to them
Yep.
ASAP. I don't know why, but always.
Quality to be able to say, I don't know, as opposed to what some people do, which is just make something up. And that's particularly problematic in a chapter leader or any kind of leader or a teacher. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've taught I've taught English grammar at all levels. I've taught at a college level, and some of the points can be really fine. And if I don't know, I'll say I don't know, and then I'll look it up, and then I'll know. Because there are places to look it up. As for UFT, it could be the UFT contract, it could be the website. I used to look things up on the website and send people links, and they would think I was a genius, but it was nothing they couldn't do themselves, you know?
Right. And I think it is very powerful to say, hey, listen, what you came at me with, it's a lot of information. Let me make sure I have the correct answer for you, and I'll get back to you by whatever time or boundary you set for yourself. I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so let's pivot and talk about social media. You're kind of an Instagram star, and I write a lot, and I've got people who read what I write, and you've got people who watch what you put up. We're both involved in social media, but very differently. I don't think I could do what you do. It's kind of a newer thing for me. I like to write. How did you get involved with social media? Was it always Instagram, or is that where you started, or did it develop from something else?
First, I do want to say that as I got older, I appreciated your blogs, Arthur.
Oh,
Writing and being able to be a great writer, which I really think that you are. It's very captivating and engaging, and it makes me want to read more. I learned to appreciate, like, wow, being strong in writing is actually, it could take you many places. So although being in front of a video or a camera, let's say, is something I never thought I would do, I realized that folks like it, and folks kind of, I don't know if it's whether they relate to me or they see like a video of someone and they're speaking in, let's say, 3 minutes or less, and they're trying to put out information. And I just learned very quickly that social media is very powerful. I actually did not have social media. Then I had it, and then I disengaged with it again because I said this is taking up too much of my time.
mhm.
And I found myself sitting on social media looking at silly videos
Uh-huh.
where I could be doing other things with my time. But once we started negotiating for a contract in 2023, I thought to myself that what better way to reach people than to get on video and talk to people about their contractual rights, what we had, what was going to be different with the new contract. And it kind of just took off in a way that I never imagined it would.
Well, I
Yeah.
see you kind of educating people. That's kind of been your thing, kind of educating people about the contract, about our rights, about our options. And I really do appreciate how you're able to get a lot out in a very short time. Your videos are just a few minutes long. You know, you're looking at the clock as you start. And that's the thing with me on video. I probably go on forever, so I don't think I'm ever going to start it. But I really do appreciate your videos. Let's move back to something else as chapter leaders. As chapter leaders, uh, we get help, we get assistance. You're running for elementary vice president because you're a bold elementary teacher. And I'm running for assistant secretary on ABC. as chapter leader, I developed a network of people who could support me and who could help me. It was my district rep's job to help me, but my district rep was busy helping 50 other schools, and I developed a web of people who would support me like that. And the main reason I'm involved with ABC is because my number one person who supported me was Amy Arundel. And she supported me as I was against her caucus, as I was aligned with her caucus, and continued. I was once again against her caucus. That's one of the reasons I'm with ABC. Why are you with ABC?
So we do share the idea of running with such a amazing human being. Amy Arundel was probably the first person at the Queens UFT office when I started working that saw something in me. My district rep is quite amazing and almost nurtured me as well to start advocating for public education or anything that was going on in education. And Amy was really, when I was working in the pension department at the Queens UFT, she saw me and said, I love what you're doing and giving folks preliminary pension consultations, but your personality and your skills, I need you out of there. And in a very positive way. Not that I wasn't able to handle what I was doing, but she saw so much more in me. And I don't know if it was the videos, or I don't know if she's seen what I have done in my own district in terms of just coming out of my shell and speaking more at public forums, at PEPs. And she really just nurtured it. She said, let's start engaging members at the Queen's office. So yeah, I think Amy really showed me what leadership looks like. Amy showed me what listening looks like, because I find that at times we have many ideas that we want to do, but it's also good to just sit back and listen to what the folks want or need, or even just their ideas. But I also joined A Better Contract Slate. I was a part of Unity and thought I was the cool kid and thought that this was a great group to be with. And I do have to say, I met a lot of wonderful people in being with the Unity Caucus. And I know even now when I speak to them, they continue to be my friend because they know the type of person I am. And just because I'm running on a different slate, it doesn't necessarily mean that my skills and my personality has changed. It's still Leah Lin. But another reason why I did run on A Better Contract Slate is because it was the only group that I thought that my ideas mattered. And that how I felt about certain things were heard. And it really just fostered like a democratic process, like listening.
I felt that too in this group. I really felt included, like 100% in this group when we met and when we talked. I've been involved with different groups. I've never felt that completely before. So that was a big thing that drew me. And I like that you talk about activating the membership. It's important we activate our membership because 75% of our membership can't even be bothered to vote right now. And we must change that. Our power is in waking up the great sleeping UFT. No longer can we see ourselves as not part of the UFT, as the UFT is over there at 52 Broadway, and Michael Mulgrew is going to come and untie us from the railroad track as the train comes for us.
Yeah, I think when I heard that 75% of our union doesn't vote, it became very problematic for me. And I thought to myself, why don't people care? But then again, I said, when have they been given the opportunity to care? You know, when are they given the time to voice how they feel, you know?
Well, people might think that it's a waste of time to vote. Unity is going to win no matter what. I mean, I felt that,
Right.
said that in the past, but last year, Unity lost the retirees who were their bedrock, their core. They really depended upon the retirees, and they lost the retirees in huge numbers, and they lost the paraprofessionals in huge numbers. So, they're feeling it right now, and hopefully, the great sleeping majority of our union is feeling that we can have a change right now because we need a change right now to be an effective union. We need to be an active union.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we are activating those folks by, you know, having these weekly meetings, curiosity meetings, like who are these people running on ABC, you know? And I think even having that curiosity and folks giving themselves the opportunity to listen is slowly but surely activating those folks who never really engaged before.
Well, we've got about 6 weeks before we find out how that works out, and I hope we see a positive change. I want to thank you for joining me today, and
Yes, thank you for having me, Arthur. Bye bye.